Good evening, all of you. Grace and peace from Yahweh, who loves us as Father and Mother, Jesus, who alone is our risen, resurrected, reigning, and returning Redeemer, and the Holy Spirit, who in her purpose, presence, and power preserves us perfectly. I am excited to be here. I am grateful. Y'all have to just pardon me and excuse me in advance, because I'm about to lose my mind. I truly was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of Yahweh. I spent 2 weeks in the hospital and 1 week just recovering at home. But there is no place like the house of Yahweh God. And I am so glad that he has seen fit to have mercy on me and to restore my health. I actually, right before I came, well, about 2 hours before I arrived here, got my staples removed. So I'm feeling pretty good. I'm gonna try not to do anything crazy, but I'm just gonna let you know I feel good. I feel good. He's given me another chance, and I think that as we look at Ecclesiastes, remember, I know that much. We will be left off at Ecclesiastes, and so as we look at Ecclesiastes, remember that one of the main themes that keeps coming up over and over again is this idea that we are given life as a gift. And we're given jobs as a gift, and everything that comes to us is a gift from Yahweh God, and to not do anything with it is to squander the gift, is to be ungrateful for the gift. So if we were given life, and life includes activity of our limbs, come on somebody, if life includes bodily function, the ability to raise my hands, the ability for me to do things with my feet and my body, then I am squandering the gift when I hold it to myself. And if there's anything that I've learned, because you don't know how much I wanted to shout when I was in that hospital bed. That was the most uncomfortable thing. If you've never been in the hospital, I mean, don't wish it on you, because I think they understand the assignment. The assignment is to make you feel so uncomfortable that you want to do everything possible to get yourself well so that you can get up out of there. Because that bed was so uncomfortable. and I was grateful. I was grateful for the roof over my head. I was a brat. I wasn't thankful for the bed. But I was thankful for the meds that they came in and gave me, so that even in my uncomfortable state, I was able to find some semblance of sleep up in there. And then, of course, every 2 hours they came in and said, Mr. Morgan, we need blood. Mr. Morgan, we need to check your vitals. Mr. Morgan, you need to let me sleep. That's what you need to do. Because I finally got there. So I am, again, thankful. I'm grateful to all of you, the Radical Grace Church family. And for those of you that join us from around the World Wide Web, in that cyberspace of Radical Grace, your prayers, your messages, your visits, just thinking of me, I felt all of that. I felt all of that, and it certainly held me up when the pain hit. It held me up in all of those instances when it was just like, I don't want to be going through this anymore. And I am grateful to be back to serve you, and to serve you in this capacity, of course, of KIR3, Keeping It Real, Relevant, and Raw, our adult Bible study class, in which we've been doing a deep dive, as we always do, in the oft misunderstood and almost not even canonized. By that I mean it almost didn't even make it into the collection of the 66 books, the book of Ecclesiastes, written by Koheleth. Let us pray for understanding, and then we will dive right into, we left off, I know it seems a long time ago, but we left off in chapter 6. So I'll let you call up chapter 6 as we prepare to go into that. Yahweh, open our hearts and our minds by the power of your Holy Spirit, that as these scriptures are read and your word is proclaimed, that we may hear with joy what it is that you say to us today. Amen. And so chapter 6, recall that in chapter 5, by way of a little, and I do mean brief, reminder, that he's been talking about folk in leadership who oppress the poor, and the fact that the poor get oppressed and the ways in which the poor get oppressed. We saw that the poor can be oppressed when folk take too much. That's very key in chapter 5, and that they definitely show that they don't care about what other folk have. Chapter 6 is very similar. These themes seem to run together. In chapter 6, it starts out by talking about a man who has shown that he doesn't care about his family. And so this is the result. In chapter 6, I'll get the NIV version because I don't have that. I didn't have that with me. So I'll open up the NIV. Okay. It says, I've seen another evil under the sun, and it weighs heavily on men. God gives a man wealth, possessions, and honor, so that he lacks nothing his heart desires. But God does not enable him to enjoy them, and a stranger enjoys them instead. We did talk about this. Remember, I think I brought up Michael Jackson, and I brought up the fact that there's a lot of celebrities who don't get to enjoy their wealth, but we, complete strangers, enjoy the fruit of their labor. And then they struggle. They can't even enjoy what they've earned. But let's keep going, though. It says, this is meaningless, a grievous evil. A man may have 100 children and live many years, yet no matter how long he lives, if he cannot enjoy his prosperity and does not receive proper burial, I say that a stillborn child is better off than he. Ooh, that's deep. A stillborn child, a miscarriage. It's better for it to be a miscarriage than to not have a proper burial. Let's look at what he means by to have a proper burial. The word for proper burial is the Hebrew word keburah. Keburah. And keburah literally means grave, burial site. What Keheleth is saying here is this man has 100 children. I want you to think about this. He's got 100 children. And when we think, even in this society, in Western society, typically it's the children of a deceased parent who plan their final resting place, who make the final arrangements for the homegoing service and everything that happens. The children generally are in charge of that. This man, according to Keheleth, has 100 children. I want you to think about this. Not a one gives him a proper burial. Look at the comparison. Out of 100 children, none of them loved father enough to honor him with a proper burial. Keheleth says, if that's the case, then you're better off never having been born. You're better off having been a miscarriage. Because there is nothing worse, he says. There's nothing that is more grievous and more evil than to not receive proper due in your very last, in your returning, in your going back, ashes to ashes and dust to dust. That your children ought to honor that. If your children don't honor that, this is the implication. We always got to look at the why might that be the case? Well, this is why this is the case. Because this is a man who squandered the gift of family, who worked so hard to amass wealth that he forgot about his children. There was a movie in the 90s. Jim Carrey starred in it. Name of it was Liar Liar. You might remember Liar, Liar. Liar, Liar is the movie about Jim Carrey's character is a lawyer. He's a lawyer, and he's a very successful trial lawyer. And you know, I'm always talking about lawyers because, you know, one of my favorite shows is Suits. I've talked about that. But it's no secret that lawyers are gone from home a lot, especially to be super successful, because they're constantly looking at other cases to find precedents. That requires spending a lot of time in libraries. It requires spending a lot of time alone to come up with successful arguments, running those arguments by colleagues, by partners in the law firm. Being a successful lawyer takes time. And in this, the premise of Liar, Liar, there's a little boy, his son. He has spent so much time being a good lawyer that it has cost him his wife. He got divorced from his wife. His wife got custody of their son because he had no time for his son. He would have time where he was awarded time to visit and play with his son. And one of the very first scenes of the movie is pretty heartbreaking, that his son is sitting out on the stoop with a baseball glove. And his mom comes out and says, "Don't worry, he'll be here." So he sits there looking at this baseball glove. And Fletcher, the lawyer, Jim Carrey's character, never shows up. Never shows up even post-divorce, even after the fact, doesn't show up to take his lawful right to spend time with his son. You can imagine the hurt that is developing in this young man's mind and his heart. This is not a young man, depending on his countenance, he may be a very forgiving man, but in general, these are not the makings. This is not setting yourself up to get a proper burial. It's not. Because you didn't pay no attention to me while you were alive. Why should I pay attention to you when you dead? And so this becomes something that we need to think about. Because once again, where are our values is the question that Kehelef wants us to know. If you're hoarding your wealth instead of sharing your wealth, because we looked at, again, 3-4 weeks ago, Kehelef says, once you have children, the only joy in life is to be able to provide for your children. The only joy you get out of work is that you know you have somewhere for that money to go, and it won't just go to waste. So if he's hoarding his wealth, if he's choosing not to spend time with his children, then they said, and returned the favor and said, well, we're not going to offer you the most respectful thing. You have to understand that, especially when we're talking about Jewish heritage, if for example, if a Jew gets a tattoo, they can't be buried in a Jewish cemetery. That's how serious this is. That's how serious it is at this point, that a man is not given a grave site. That means he's truly messed over his family or his heritage. That's a big deal. So this is not pettiness. This is part of their culture. This is part of, in terms of the context of what's going on, and it helps us to understand why he says this is evil under the sun. And it's meaningless, and it shouldn't come to this. That there's never, it is never that deep. It's never that deep that I can ignore that I have to ignore my family. It's never that deep. Something interesting that I discovered, go to Exodus 4. We're talking about ignoring the family. Go to Exodus 4. This will come up again in a sermon because I'm working on it, but I just want you to see something. Because this messed me up, and I think it's going to mess you up too. Exodus 4. Then Moshe went back to I'm sorry. Let me start up a little bit earlier. I'll pick it up at verse 18. But before I do that, let me give you a little context so you can appreciate the content. That in chapter 4, now in chapter 3, Yahweh appears to Moses the first time at the bush that appears to be burning and calls him to go to Egypt and tell Pharaoh to let his people go so they can go worship him. Yahweh ends up calling Moshe to do that 5 different times. The first 4 times, as we so commonly see, Moses has excuses, and Moses pretty much says, I ain't doing it. I can't do it. I'm not going to do it. By the 5th time, he has demonstrated, or Yahweh has demonstrated for him that, hey, I'm the one that's behind it. Throw your staff down. I'll turn it into a snake. Watch that happen. Put your arm in your cloak. Pull it out. What do you notice about your hand? Yeah, I did that. I'm in charge. You ain't got to worry about a thing. You are the vessel. You're the instrument. Just be where I told you to be. Let me work through you. That's a word for somebody. And so finally, Moses relents. And so here's what he does. He goes to his father-in-law, Jethro, to ask permission for him to pack up Jethro's daughter, Moses' wife, and his family and head back to Egypt. So let's see what happens. Verse 18, Moses went back to Jethro, his father-in-law, and said to him, let me go back to my own people in Egypt to see if any of them are still alive. Jethro said, go, and I wish you well. Now Yahweh had said to Moshe in Midian, go back to Egypt, for all the men who wanted to kill you are dead. You got to kind of remember, again, back at the beginning of Exodus, Moses, who masquerades as an Egyptian. In fact, he is an Egyptian in terms of the way he was raised, but he kills an Egyptian. And therefore, he ends up becoming a fugitive. And the Egyptians want him killed. So he flees for his life. Yahweh says, you can go back. Everybody who wanted you dead who wanted to kill you is dead. So Moses took his wife and his sons, put them on a donkey, and started back to Egypt. And he took the staff of God in his hand, the same staff that earlier he threw down, and Yahweh turned into a snake. Yahweh said to Moses, when you return to Egypt, see that you perform before Pharaoh all the wonders I have given you the power to do. But I will harden his heart so he will not let the people go. Then say to Pharaoh, this is what Yahweh says, Israel is my firstborn son, and I told you, let my son go, so he may worship me. But you refuse to let him go, so I will kill your firstborn son. At a lodging place on the way, Yahweh met Moses and was about to kill him. Who ready to just throw the book down? Who's ready to just throw the Bible away? Hold on. Moses is said in Exodus 33, when he goes to speak with Yahweh, the Hebrew translates as mouth to mouth. We would say face to face. Moses is the only one, remember, who can get close enough to Yahweh without suffering severe consequences. Moshe is the only one who can be that close to the presence of Yahweh, who has an intimate relationship with him. And yet, verse 24, at a lodging place on the way, Yahweh met Moses and was about to kill him. Hold up. Wait a minute. You called me. You wanted me so much that you called me not once, but 5 different times. You equipped me and proved to me that you would be with me and that I just need to let myself be used by you, but you tried to kill me. I can imagine Moses saying, what in the world is this? What have I done to deserve this? Why would you be trying to kill me? And I wanted to know, I know you want to know, because that doesn't sound right. Why would he be, why are you going to try to kill Moses, Yahweh? He's intimate with you. I know he's not perfect. No man is. But you love him. You chose him. Why would you try to kill Moshe? Let me help you understand why he wants to kill Moshe. Look at verse 25. But Zipporah is Moses' wife, took a flint knife, cut off her son's foreskin, circumcision, and touched Moshe's feet with it. Surely you are a bridegroom of blood to me, she said. So Yahweh let him alone. It seems that the attempt to kill Moshe, the desire to kill Moshe, has to do with the fact that Moshe's sons are not circumcised. Okay, why is that a big deal? Well, if you're Jewish in this culture, go back to Genesis. Yahweh tells Abraham that the sign of being in the covenant, in the covenant family of Abraham, is that the boys get circumcised on the 8th day. That's the sign. That's the physical sign. All boys must have that happen, or there's no proof that they belong in the family, in the covenant family. The other thing that has to happen is sons of the covenant must have the blood of a Israelite mother. So it's two things. In order to be in the covenantal family, a boy must be circumcised by his 8th day, and he must have the blood of a Israelite mother. Zipporah is not Israelite. She's not Israelite, but she gets the boys get a pass on that one. We can talk about that a little bit later. But there's something else that happens. The boys haven't been circumcised yet. Now, Bible readers understand that once Moses gets to Egypt, that there's a situation. Yahweh said it. I'm going to kill the firstborn of everybody who's not in the covenantal family. Now, he comes along later and he says, put the blood of the lamb on your doorpost. My angel will see the blood of the lamb as the physical sign that there's a member of the covenantal family under that roof, and he will pass by that place and won't kill the child, the firstborn in that household. So, stop me right there. Yahweh always will make a way. The provision was, and this is for somebody, I need to point this out, the law said, and yes, even the law given by Yahweh said the boy must be circumcised by his 8th day and must have the blood of an Israelite woman. But, let me point this out to you, Yahweh is not as legalistic as we want him to be. Yahweh is not as dogmatic as we want him to be. So maybe, just maybe, that is a sign that the church needs to not be as dogmatic as we are. Maybe, just maybe, it's not black and white. Maybe, just maybe, the provision is made that there's another way that I'll have mercy on those who may not have been circumcised and who may not have the blood of an Israelite woman, because maybe, just maybe, I love them. So maybe, just maybe, even when they do X, Y, and Z, and I've said don't do X, Y, and Z, that maybe, just maybe, I have blood on a post. Somebody say Jesus. That I see that causes me to have mercy on the ones who didn't do what I asked them to do according to the letter. Because I'm not a monstrous God. Because I'm not a God that takes pleasure in taking lives. Because I'm a God of a second, forget second, another chance. Oh, there's always another way. There's always another way. You better be thankful. You better be praising Yahweh God that there's always another way. So that when I don't make it according to the law, come on, Paul, come on, Romans deep dive. There's another way for me to be justified. There's another way for me to be approved in his sight. And here's the situation, getting back to what I was getting to so that I can get back to what I was getting to in the first place. Because we're supposed to be in Ecclesiastes, but it all goes together. Yahweh wanted to kill Moshe because Moshe was in violation of the law. And this is how he's in violation of the law. He has not had his son circumcised. Well, big deal. Up to this point, he hasn't had his son circumcised. Why does Yahweh want to kill him now? Good question. Because he has sent Moshe to complete a mission. He has told Moshe, he has called Moshe to do ministry. This is a caution to those of us who serve in the church. Yes, we serve in the church, but once again, your family is important. You are not to sacrifice your family, even for ministry. I don't know what pastor needed to hear that. I don't know what deacon needed to hear that. I don't know what elder needed to hear that. I don't know what member at large that is engaged in different ministries in the church needed to hear that. But you are not to sacrifice your family for ministry. And that's what upset Yahweh here. What upset Yahweh was Moses putting ministry above family. No. Your family is your first ministry. If I don't get my house right, I ain't got no business trying to get nobody else's house right. And so Yahweh wants to send a painful message to Moses, and his wife gets it. Ain't it something how oftentimes, again, we talked about how Yahweh and Moses speak mouth to mouth. They have an intimate relationship. And yet it's the one that doesn't have an intimate relationship with Yahweh that gets it. It's folk that's been in church 50, 60, 70 years, can quote all 4 verses from Amazing Grace, can quote verses back and forth in the Bible and give you page numbers and give you catechisms and tell you where things are found in certain confessions, but it's the ones that have been outside that can truly see when Yahweh is at work. It's interesting that the eyes of the non-faithful attender, the one that might be just trying Yahweh out for the first time, the one who doesn't have as intimate a relationship as the every Sunday Bible-toting church goer, seems to have a better understanding of what he's doing. I'm going to leave that right there because I'm going to get in trouble. So, bringing it back then to Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes 6:3, Moses was setting himself up. If he weren't careful, one, his boys were going to be killed anyway because there was no sign. And if he were killed because he sacrificed his sons, then we are to believe that his sons probably weren't going to give him a proper burial. If they found out, Dad, really? You all this time? Because they're older than 8 months. They're older than 8 months at this point. All this time, you knew we were supposed to be circumcised in order to save our lives, and you waited until you had an assignment, a ministry assignment, to endanger us and put us in danger and sacrifice us so that for the sake of you doing ministry? No, Yahweh is not pleased. And his sons would not have been pleased. That's what we're seeing with Ecclesiastes 6:3. Moral of the story: value the family. The family unit is a gift given to us from Yahweh. He operates himself in a family. How else? We describe the Trinity, and we see the Trinity revealed in itself as Father and Son and Holy Spirit. But there's a purpose, a reason that there's a Father and a Son. Why aren't they best friends? Why aren't they co-laborers? Why does he present himself as Father and Son? Because he highly prizes and values family. And anything we do that squanders the family is not going to be pleasing to him. And so let's keep going. Let's keep going. I've done enough on that one. He says, it's better to be stillborn. Verse 4. It comes without meaning, it departs in darkness, and in darkness its name is shrouded. Meaning, again, when you're stillborn, you're instantly forgotten about. So there's no, and you know, that's not true. We know some folk do, depending on how old the child was, do give a proper burial to a miscarriage. If he's actually saying stillborn, we assume, I think stillborn, to my understanding, is an actual, the child is fully formed. I'm not a doctor. I don't even pretend to be one on TV. But it's different if it's a miscarriage. I believe the word we're looking for here is miscarriage, because there's no proper burial for the stillborn, for the miscarriage. Though it never saw the sun or knew anything, it has more rest than does that man. Yes, Yahweh cares about the child that doesn't make it to see light. Yes, he does. Even if he lives 1,000 years twice over, but fails to enjoy his prosperity, do not all go to the same place? Yes, all of us end up in the exact same place. It's a sad situation. Everyone leaves here in the physical sense. So, Keheleth, remember, in Jewish society, he has an idea, he believes in a possibility of an afterlife. He has no idea what that looks like, and that's not what they're taught. Sheol. Sheol means the underground. That's where they go. That's it. When you die, you die. There's no concept of resurrection, except Keheleth kind of has an idea in his mind. He says, remember back in the 3rd chapter, that another world is put in our minds, that there's curiosity given to us to search the scriptures and to search Yahweh about what's next. So he does understand that it's not destined, it's not necessarily that everyone dies and that's it, that's game over. He believes that there's a sequel coming. He just has no idea what it's going to be, and he focuses on what's under the sun. Remember, Ecclesiastes is about what we experience, what we can see, what we can hear, not what we can have faith in necessarily. But it's coming here in a little bit. Verse 7 says, all of man's efforts are for his mouth, yet his appetite's never satisfied. What advantage has a wise man over a fool? What does a poor man gain by knowing how to conduct himself before others? Better what the eye sees than the roving of the appetite. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. So again, a person works in order to live. So the idea of never getting enough means constantly having to work because things are constantly getting better. What iPhone are we on now? I don't have an iPhone, but are they on like number 30 or something like that? And they're going to keep coming out with them. So as long as they keep making better, we're always going to chase better until we realize that when I get a hold of the best, there's nothing better. There's nothing that tops Yahweh God. And doing things Yahweh's way. When we say, remember, we talk about metonym. Yahweh is not physical. I can't grab him and say, I got him, now I'm good. Okay? So when I say all I need is Yahweh, and that means that I've got the best, I've got the way of Yahweh. I'm following what he wants for me. I'm valuing the family that he's given to me. I'm valuing my time on earth. I'm putting forth effort and energy into everything that I do while I have the ability to do that, instead of rolling over and playing dead and resigning to fatalistic thoughts that everything is a season and I just got to go with that. No, we don't. That's not the expectation. Yahweh has put fight in us. He has given us energy, and he expects us to do things while we are here and have the ability to do them. So, we now as we look at again labor. Labor has been a common theme in the book of Ecclesiastes. And satisfying appetites. Greek philosophers made a core pillar of their philosophy the observation that satisfying appetites does not bring true happiness. Socrates and Plato argued against the idea that happiness came from the fulfillment of desires or appetites. Plato argues that if this were true, the happiest man would actually be a leper, because he continuously has the pleasure of fulfilling the desire to scratch an itch. That's crazy. So when it comes to seeking happiness from fulfilling desires, the wise man does not have an advantage over the fool, because neither of them can find happiness through seeking pleasures. And this is where Koheleth is going back to chapters 1 and 2, because chapters 1 and 2 are saying the same thing. That's where we first saw chasing the wind, and where we first saw the idea of the eyes always wanting more than what they can see, and the ears wanting more than what they can hear. So nor does the poor man have an advantage because he knows how to walk before the living. The phrase walk before living refers to having street smarts. Because folk that we would say are poor and impoverished, they know how to get by. We love po folk. Po folk know how to hustle. And this is why I think what was interesting about the pandemic was we saw folk who have struggled, who have had to move from the bottom to the top, were actually all right, because they knew how to figure stuff out to stay where they were or to get higher. Folk that had only been high and lost so much lost their minds because they ain't know how to hustle. And I've said this before, the worst thing, to quote Koheleth, a grievous evil under the sun is when church folk, Christians, forget how to hustle just because we get a little something, something. No, don't stop working. Don't stop expending energy. There's always more for us to do while we're here to be able to do it. Solomon adds that what the eye sees is better than what the soul desires. So another translation would say it this way: enjoy what you have rather than desiring what you don't have. That sounds like it came straight from the Gospel of Shania Twain. It's not having, what does she say? It's not wanting what you don't have, it's wanting what you got. I'm trying to remember, whatever, soak up the sun, look up the lyrics. She says something to that effect. I'm going to say it again. Enjoy what you have rather than desiring what you don't have. Because, Jesus will say this later, if you're faithful over a few things, I'll make you a ruler over many. But you need to prove to me that you can handle what I've given you. You need to prove to me that you know how to say thank you for what I've given you. My dad used to sing a song, said, thank you makes room for more. And it's not about getting stuff. Let's be clear. I've said that 1,000 times. We're not here to get stuff. Because again, we're talking about this. Be happy with what you got. Be thankful with what you got. Even to the point, and I said it and I meant it. Everything I'm able to do, lifting my hand this high, I am so thankful for that. Because there was a time when that was painful to me. And it was only a couple of days ago. You don't know because you weren't there. So when I lose my mind, it's because I'm so glad about what I've got. And when you focus on what you have, you can't help but get a heart of thanksgiving. You can't help but put yourself in a situation where you just know, I got to give him glory. I've got to give him praise, because if it had not been for Yahweh on my side, I don't know where I would be right now. Enjoy what you have rather than desiring what you don't have. While you've got it, make use of it. It may not always be there, but while you've got it, make use of it. When we live to satisfy appetites, your appetite becomes your master. And the key to happiness is to discover contentment in what is. Come here, Paul. I've learned how to be content in anything. This is what he says. He wasn't talking about being able to win contests. He wasn't talking about being able to fall in love or anything, all that other stuff. What he said when he said, I can do all things through Christ, he said, I've learned to be content whether I have money or whether I don't, whether I have support or I don't. I've learned whatever I've got in this jail cell, I'm going to find a way to be content with anything that I see that I've got. I'm going to find a way to make use of whatever I find up in here. Mama is an amazing woman. You've heard her preach. And she's amazing because she's my mama. And mama can do something that I can't do. Bless her heart. I need to try to figure out how to do this. Mama can go in the kitchen, not have a recipe on her mind. Open up cupboards, open up the refrigerator, pull stuff out, throw it in some pots and some pans, mix it together, and there's dinner on the table. She uses what she's got. And it tastes good. Contrast that with baby boy. I go to the refrigerator, I go to the cupboard, and I have an idea, and I say, I really want to make such and such a thing, but I've only got. I can't make such and such a thing. Now, there's a lot of stuff I can make with what I got, but I don't think like that. Partially because when it comes to cooking, I don't have no hustle. I'm gonna admit that. When it comes to cooking, I don't have no hustle. But this is what I'm talking about. Use what you got. Find the things that are around you. Find the people that are around you. Enjoy the people that are around you. You don't need new friends. You don't hang out with the ones you got. You can tell me to stop, but I'm not gonna. Yes, I am. I'm talking about you. I'm talking about me too. Use what you got. It's folk that leave churches. Ooh, I shouldn't go here. I'm gonna, because I done already opened up the can. I'm going to a different church because they got this. You didn't exhaust and use all of the resources and the ministries of the church that you were at before you left. Yet you think you're going to be faithful in another church? I'm going to stop. I'm going to get an email. But I know I'm right about it. Use what you got while you got it. So, if we define happiness as gaining something we don't have, how do you know? That's part of it. If I don't have it, how do I know it's going to make me happy? This is where we end up with something called buyer's remorse. You can never be happy until you learn to avail yourself of the stuff that's around you, because happiness comes from within. This is what Keheleth is saying. If you consistently base your happiness on stuff that you can't see, that you don't have, that's outside of you, that may or may not come to you, your happiness is always in flux. But when my happiness is based on the inside and I'm able to have it come up from the outside, come up from the inside to the outside, that's happiness. There ought to be something that allows me to enjoy myself right here, because the other side is futility and striving after wind, as he's already talked about. Striving after wind, because you can't capture wind. You can go out there with a bag all you want to. You ain't gonna hold no wind. It's crazy to try to capture wind. It's gonna get out. So be grateful for where you are, what you have, and the stewardship that you have been granted as a gift. All right, I got a few more minutes. Let's see what we can do with this last piece of chapter 6. That essentially, this is going to be a huge shift in understanding, a huge shift in the theme, if you will. In chapter 6, Keheleth starts to change what he's been talking about. Striving after wind, chasing wind, futility of the wind. Is the last time we heard that was when I just said it, Ecclesiastes 6:9. He's not going to use that phrase anymore. He won't use that idiom. Toiling and labor, he's not going to talk about that anymore. He spent a whole 6 chapters talking about it. Keheleth now replaces his emphasis on work and labor with an emphasis on the incomplete knowledge that we have. That we, as human beings, have an ability to know certain things within our present experience, but we know nothing about the future. So it goes in a similar situation. Knowledge of what I know in the present versus knowledge of what I don't know in the future. So I can get negged out and I can get upset worrying about things that have not happened, that may or may not happen, or I can focus in on my present. I got friends, you've got friends, that sometimes they're a killjoy to talk to, because everything is what if, and what if it doesn't, and what if, and this is happening, and that's happening, and what if this goes on, and everything is what if. What about what you got going on right now? Is there anything that you can be thankful about, that you can be joyful about right now? When we have incomplete knowledge and uncertainty, we got to get to a point where that doesn't bother us anymore. And when we don't have complete knowledge of what's going on in the future, this is where the sovereignty, the omnipotence, or all-powerfulness, And the track record of Yahweh God steps in. Verse 10. Whatever exists has already been named, and what man is has been known. No man can contend with one who is stronger than he, Yahweh. The more the words, the less the meaning. And how does that profit anyone? For who knows what is good for man in life during the few and meaningless days he passes through like a shadow? Who can tell him what will happen under the sun after he is gone? Who can tell you what's going to happen to your fortune when you pass away? Who can tell you what happens to your house? Who can tell you whether or not people are going to get along? Who can tell you what your legacy will be? Yahweh can, doesn't mean he's gonna, and he doesn't need to. Why? Because that's not your concern. You ever got that question? I've seen this question. If people ask this question a lot, said, if you knew you were going to die next week, what would you do? I hate that question. I hate that question. If you knew you were going to die next week, what would you do with your last remaining days? It's such a, personally, I don't want to know how much time I got left. Because that's where worry starts to set in. I haven't done enough of this. I need to do that. And I move away from where I am. The point is, I got a life to live right now. I got a life to live right now. But I do believe in this. Because if I treat this situation the way that the Bible tells us, that there is a time appointed to every man and woman for death. And no man knows the day nor the hour in which he's coming back. And it doesn't necessarily mean coming back collectively. It could be coming back individually. Since none of us know when that's happening, you ought to live every day like it's my last. I ought to live every day with thanksgiving in my heart. I ought to live every day saying I love you to everyone that means something to me, and even to the folk that I don't know well, because they're my neighbor that I don't know well, and I'm supposed to treat the immigrants with more respect than I give to myself. Since I know that tomorrow is not promised, that's not cause to worry. That's cause to rejoice in where I am right now. And where does my rejoicing come from? Not in the Pelagius idea that I'm about to leave the earth, that I'm going to leave this broken body, that I won't have to deal with this scar that came from the surgery that I had, that I won't have to deal with scar tissue building up that could still affect my situation later down in the road. I'm not going to worry about that. That's not what I'm caused to worry about. Why don't I not worry about that? Because I know who holds the future. I know who it is that's stronger than I am. I know who it is who can tell me about myself. I know who it is who's counted every hair on my head, even the ones that I ain't even got left. I know who it is that woke me up this morning. I know who it is that's going to close my eyes tonight. I know who it is that is going to see to it, for as long as he desires, that I have everything that I need in order to live in godliness. I don't have to worry because I got a God. I got a God, and everything, any and everything, that word, he says, he cannot dispute with him who is stronger than he. The Hebrew word takif refers to, this is the only time it's used in scripture, and it means to fall under the authority of the mighty one, that nobody else can judge me. Oh, nobody else can judge me. Nobody else, mama said this way, got a heaven or a hell to put me in. So I don't have to care about your opinion. I don't have to love what you say and don't say about me. I don't have to seek your approval. I know who it is who knows me and who judges me. No matter who can try to make me feel bad, I know I'm all right because of who I know. No matter what the future holds, I don't know what the future holds. I don't have to know what the future holds because I know who is in control of the future. It works this way. It's some folk, I've said this analogy before. I don't care now if we go into the fourth quarter and the Lions are down, because I know who my quarterback is. If you're watching and you're a Dallas fan, ha, 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 ha. I don't worry about that because I know Jared Goff is going out there. Jared Goff has receipts. Jared Goff has been 18 for 18. Ain't no quarterback in this season. I don't care who is. I don't know. Even if he's a back-to-back Super Bowl champion, Patrick Mahomes, I'm looking at you. You haven't gone 18 for 18 yet. So I'm not putting my trust in you. Ain't but one quarterback who's done that. And when I get to a point where I say I don't know about the future, but I do know that ain't but one God who has been tempted on every side the way that I have. Ain't but one God who has defeated time and space by overcoming the enemy of death. Ain't but one God who I feel comfortable serving and trusting and relying in because he's been there and done that and got the t-shirt. Hey, somebody. When you serve a God like that, when a God like that is on your side, when you ally yourself with Yahweh, worry is not a thing, but rejoicing is what I turn to in my present. And I rejoice in my present that I know him. I rejoice in my present that he knows me. That's even better. I rejoice in my present that he loves me so much and he cares for me so much that he's going to make a way. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know where the check is coming from. I don't know who's going to give me a hug when I'm depressed. I don't know who's going to say the right thing to snap me back into my right mind, but I know he's got something in place for me. And that's a source of my rejoicing. And so, if we've got anything from chapter 6, it's the understanding, first and foremost, the importance of family. We don't squander family for the sake of accumulating wealth or accumulating fame. We also must make sure that we're not chasing things that we don't have, but enjoying things that we do have. And in the process, when we get to a point where there are questions about tomorrow, there's no need to worry. I know it's going to be all right because I've got the God who has the receipts, who has proven he's got it all in control. I'm so grateful to be back. This was fun, and I made it. Look at that. I ain't even have to sit down. I was worried I might have to sit down for a minute. So I look forward to seeing you, all of you, Sunday morning. We have our fast class Foundations and Spiritual Transformation at 9 o'clock, followed by our morning worship celebration at 10. We look forward to seeing you here at 600 Lafayette Avenue Northeast. And until next time, may you lift each other in prayer and lift Yahweh in praise.